Welcome back to Synergy to Synastry with Christine and Renee. Today is episode 12, and we're talking about dreams in the astral plane. First, we want to thank our listeners for continuing to subscribe to the podcast and listening to all the episodes. We want to encourage you to continue to rate the podcast across all of our platforms, and please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We love to see your feedback. We've established on this podcast that we both dream every night, often many dreams, which are incredibly vivid. Evidence of dreaming dates back to 4000 BC in the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh. While dreaming is still a mystery today, scientists have proven that without dreams we would likely go insane, which is a wild fact. Everyone dreams. Even if you don't remember them, they're important to our well-being. Why don't we give a breakdown of the different types of dreams?
There's a wide swath of dreams that the average person may encounter, including anxiety, fear-based or nightmares, recent events being scrambled together. So, something you were just talking about or listening to, or a place that you went, distant memories from the past getting tossed in a blender of your unconscious, premonitions, visitation, lucid dreaming, and then anything that's super emotionally triggering. I'm just going to read off a quote I heard from a psychologist and dream expert, Dr. Michael Lennox. And he was discussing in a podcast the disconnect that we tend to have with our mind and body and intuition. Quote, "Your body can't be in yesterday or tomorrow, but your mind can." The idea here is our mind can be caught in anxiety, can be thinking about the future, can be dwelling on the past. It jumps around, and in some situations, as we know, it can be highly, highly unreliable. But your body, which is something we have mentioned several times throughout this podcast, is your touchstone. It's a foundation that carries the truth of your intuition. And that's part of why your mind can talk you out of things. And if you do a meditation practice or yoga or any of the other practices that we've discussed on this podcast, you can help quiet what he refers to as your narrating mind. Because what's happening is it's interfering and it tricks us into not listening to our intuition and or what our bodies are telling us.
That reminds me of inner child work that we do. So, like, your body is always in the present, but your mind can sort of go back and replay some of those situations you were in and sort of rewrite them. Basically, when you're feeling an emotion or you're triggered, usually it's something from the past. So, allowing your mind to go there and figure out what memory is causing the trigger in your body in the present helps you because you can look at that memory with adult eyes and sort of rework it. In one way, your mind can be super anxious because it's worrying about the future. And in another way, you can harness it as a tool to sort of go back and heal kind of the things that your body is experiencing in the present.
So, as we delve into the topic of dreams, of course, we're going to share all sorts of psychic dreams and experiences that we've had. We know that people love that when we discussed it in episode 1, way back when, in March. And we're going to do more of that. But before we get there, I have some questions for you, Christine, about your dreaming. Have you ever had dreams that you are not actually in? And what I mean by this is it's not that you're in the dream and you're watching something else, but just a story is playing out and you are not consciously within the dream. It's just there.
I had a dream that I was watching a plane on a runway crash, explode into fire, whatever. And then I woke up and then I turned on the news and there was a plane crash in Brazil on the runway. Another dream that was coming to me was I was watching a scene in a dream of a bunch of people, I guess having dinner. It was a big family event. And I'm watching the scene, but I look over and my friend's father, who had just passed away, was there, but nobody could see him. Nobody could see me. And I was like, what are you doing here? And why can I see you? There was like one layer here where I was kind of in it and it was probably about me. But at the same time, I was also watching another scene taking place.
Yeah, like I've had dreams that I'm watching TV or I'm watching a movie or I'm watching the news. So I'm in the dream, but the dream is focused on me observing something else. So I would consider that one layer removed, but two layers removed is I'm just not there. So I looked through my journal and I found some examples. March 15th of this year, the scene was a mother telling a story to someone else about how her young son, like toddler age, was holding a toy and giggling and started to run, and he ended up running off a cliff. She was explaining the horror of it and the sadness of it to whoever this person was, and the fact that the worst part was this kid didn't know what he was doing. That was the dream. And I wake up going, did that actually happen to somebody? Or is that going to happen to someone? And I'm not getting clear names and faces or locations, but there's a whole scenario that's happening.
Do we know what these dreams mean? Is it a past life? Am I traveling on the astral plane?
So, speaking of the astral plane, Christine, why don't you define that?
The astral plane is where our spirit can travel while we're sleeping. This is also the place where souls rest between death and the next life. It's kind of a place where you could sort of interact with the metaphysical stuff that you can't interact with in your everyday human life.
So, are you saying that anytime we're having a psychic dream, it means that our soul is going to the astral plane?
I would think so. We go to the astral plane when we channel or we're receiving messages from a layer that's one step removed from our human consciousness. The other thing I do want to say about the astral plane is that you can go there consciously. There's a meditation that we learned in Be Light School where basically you sort of leave your body through your belly button with a cord attached. You can imagine your higher self or your soul kind of taking this elevator down into your fourth chakra. And then your soul kind of lifts out and you start ascending the astral plane. And at some point, you fall asleep and you have dreams where you're on the astral plane, but you're a bit more in control of it.
Is it important to just know that a space like this can exist and can be a representation of what psychics and intuitives are tapping into? It's the energy of the collective. Or is it something that maybe they should make a point of trying to tap into with intention, or doing a meditation where
Hmm.
they're visualizing themselves there to get maybe different information or deeper insights?
I think the astral plane can be used with intention, but if you're not using it with intention right now, that's also okay. Just going to sleep, you're naturally going to visit the astral plane because that's where we visit when we dream. If there is something with your family that you want to work out, but you can't work out with a family member, you can do that on the astral plane because your souls can talk to one another. You can also ascend the astral plane even higher and meet with some of your spirit guides or people who have passed on. I like using the astral plane intentionally, but like with most things, I do it sporadically when I feel called to. For the most part, I allow my body to drift off when I'm dreaming and visit the astral plane that way.
Hold on tight, Spider Monkey. We're talking about psychic dreams. Well, actually, we should start with normal ones first. Christine and I do have non psychic dreams on a very regular basis. There are also situations where we think it's a completely mundane dream, and then we find out later that it was some sort of a premonition, but that's just an aside. Examples of traditional dreams that we have include people from high school or extracurriculars that we had in our childhood, being late for something, organizing or planning, current events. So, this is like that scramble I mentioned earlier. It's something that you saw in the news or that you've been listening to. Other things like celebrities, you're watching a TV show or a movie, or it's an actor that you really like, they pop up in your dream. Finding extra rooms in your apartment, or finding things, walking out and about in the city, in nature, or your pets. I'm going to turn it over to you to review some common dream symbolism.
Within dreaming symbology, there are universal symbols and there are personal symbols. So, universal symbols are things that almost all of us can relate to, right? Colors, numbers. Personal symbols are things that only you can relate to. So if you have a dream and it turns out that tissue boxes are really important for you, they remind you of something or someone, that's a personal symbol for you. If you're looking for places to analyze your own dreams and look up universal symbology, I use both dreammoods.com and a book that was recommended to me by someone. It's called The Gypsy Dream Dictionary by Raymond Buckland. And I'm aware that gypsy can be a derogatory term. And I think Raymond Buckland himself is Romani. And I think he talks about it in the book. If you want to analyze some of your dreams now, here are 5 common universal symbols. The first is water, and water can be your subconscious. How was the water moving? Was it a tsunami or was it very calm water? Was it clear or was it very dark and murky? This will kind of give you an idea of what your emotions are like, what your subconscious is like. The next one is your house. A house can represent your body, the lower floors of the house as the lower portion of your body, meaning like the kitchen is probably your stomach. And the upper floor is kind of like your bedroom is probably your mind. School or college or practices in your dreams, being late, missing an exam, falling, those can be signs of stress. And usually when you're having a stress dream and you wake up in the morning, you're like, I already know that I'm stressed. Why would you continue to stress me out? But there may be something else within the dream that your subconscious is trying to point you towards. I learned a long time ago that when your teeth are falling out in a dream, it could mean that money is coming your way. And the last one, this one I have a lot, is being pregnant in a dream. And I also lucid dream. So sometimes in my dream, I'm like, how the hell did I get pregnant? But if you're pregnant in a dream and you're not pregnant, it could be a sign of new beginnings. If you're working towards something and you're 9 months pregnant in the dream, you're almost there. You're about to give birth to your new idea. If you're earlier in your pregnancy, you're like 3 months, 4 months, things are cooking. Now that we've talked about some different symbology, Renee and I should jump into some stories that we have about our dreams.
Yeah, so over the last year or so, I've noticed a trend, some of them actually including common symbols that you just mentioned, Christine. So I consistently have dreams where there's babies or there's kids. Also included are different relationship dynamics. So whether that's I'm dating somebody or I'm in a serious relationship with them, or there's some sort of a negative dynamic. It's fighting or like assault or things like that. It can really swing wide both directions. I'll also have dreams about the body. Something's happening with a specific body part, or an injury being sustained, or death. That as a package has increased over the last year or so, and they have been on a semi regular basis. So I try to keep a log, almost like a psychic dictionary for myself, to tap into, well, what might that specific injury signify? Because then I could use that while giving readings. So I've had these motifs of pulling or spitting something out of my mouth, or my mouth being full. I'm trying to communicate and then I need to pull something out. And these can be crazy things. There was like a sea creature in my mouth, or like a ball of hair. Other things that come up, a little less dark: music or singing, being in nature, traveling, food, of course, a surprise to no one, cooking or eating it, being around it. And I've also increasingly had dreams that involve me using psychic gifts. They were being discussed, or something magical or supernatural was happening. I've also had a lot of dreams about self defense or boundaries being crossed. I've had an increase in dogs, mice, and bugs. And I've been having dreams about my name, origin, and ancestry. And then finally, just other social dynamics. So that could be someone's being bullied, me or someone else, or ostracized. That feels very much like witch wound, which Christina and I talk about. I'm breaking out of being captive somewhere, or someone's chasing me and I'm running away from them. I'm actually a teacher at a school, or there's politics or just other social systems and things that are being discussed. Christine, what about you?
Shockingly, I don't dream about food. I just I just talk about it a lot in my waking life. Recently, I've been having a lot of dreams about relationships. I've also been getting a lot of addresses in Brooklyn this year. So, for example, I have 200 Franklin Street for Park Place. If any listeners know of these addresses or these neighborhoods, like please reach out because I don't know why I'm dreaming about these. From January, at the beginning of the month, I kept dreaming that I was vomiting. And it turns out when you're vomiting in a dream, it's your soul rejecting something. And then later on at the end of the month, I had a bowel movement in a dream, which is probably TMI. But when you have a bowel movement in a dream, it's symbolism of your soul releasing something. So clearly, I am just processing a lot.
Christine, have you ever had a dream where you are in someone else's perspective?
Oh, yes. And I don't know what to do with those. So I kind of just put them away. But I've had dreams where I'm a man and in real life, I am very much a woman. And I've also had dreams where I'm speaking fluently other languages that I don't speak.
I've had the dreams where I'm a man in it,
Hmm.
but I have never had speaking another language.
Spanish, Russian. I don't know these languages at all. And, maybe Italian is similar to Spanish, so I would give a little leeway that way. But when there are ones that are outside of my linguistics, I am very confused about what's going on.
What about ones that are happening in a different era? Because that's another trend that I've been seeing for myself in the last year or so. Literally within the last week, I was in a park somewhere and I was carrying bags and I was walking down the street, and then it kind of became a city. And I looked up and there was a temple. I looked at it and thought, oh, that's out of place. And then I've had other dreams where I was fully immersed there. And in all of those dreams, it's never that I am somebody else or that I am observing it. Whenever I have dreams that are in these ancient times, it's always I am there and I'm interacting with people.
I have had dreams where I'm in another time period, but mine have gone to the past and also to the future. Because I have dreams where I wake up in what feels like another world, but I am myself in all of those too. I don't know if we're lucid dreaming at the same time because we do recognize that things are out of place. I do think that they're past lives or there's like some sort of glitch in the matrix. Is this a past life I need to revisit in a meditation that I need to learn something from? Or is this just happenstance and this is where my mind went while I'm dreaming? And yours have been ancient. Have you ever been in like, I don't know, the Renaissance or the 1800s?
It's like a desert and there's stone temples.
Mine bounce around, which I don't even know what to do with. That's really interesting.
Let's transition to talk about the super psychic dreams. I have premonitions, but not all of them are forward thinking. This can happen while I'm sleeping, but can also happen while I'm awake. I'm sensing something as it is happening in real time. Two quick examples. I had this dream that my friend Lauren couldn't sleep. She was pacing around her house and she was massively overheating, and it's like she just couldn't cool down. So I was there in the dream and we were interacting a little bit, but she was just like, "Oh, I'm so hot. I'm so hot." And then even the fan wasn't working and nothing was working. I woke up and I told her about it, and she said, "I could not sleep last night. I was so hot." So I must have been dreaming that while it was happening in real time, that she actively couldn't sleep because she was overheating. So that's a fun one. One that is not fun. Back in 2015, and again, this is pre psychic exploration. In the middle of the night, I like woke up gasping. I was thinking about an active shooter and I was really scared. And so I'm lying in my bed in the middle of the night. I went on Twitter and I was poking around and I was trying to see nothing, no current events. Once I calmed down, I fell back asleep. Then when I woke up again, I did the same thing. I went right to my phone. At that time that I woke up, it was 2 something in the morning. In California, the San Bernardino shooting was happening, which was an active shooter situation and a bunch of people died. So I woke up at that exact moment that it was in process before the news reporting came out.
My mouth is on the floor. That's kind of like similar to my Brazil thing, but wow. I don't know if my examples are going to live up to yours. I've had some real time dreams as well, midnight or 1 a.m., and my ex boyfriend had just gotten home. I had a dream you were climbing this specific landmark. He's like, "Are you kidding me? We just found out that we're going to be climbing that landmark within the next week or so." 2017, I was on vacation with my friend. "Oh my God, I had a dream that you were engaged last night." She's like, "To who?" And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin the whole experience of her dating this guy. And sure enough, this past Christmas, they got engaged. And I was like, yes, this has been marinating for, what is it, 6, 7 years now. And it turns out it was correct. I found this and I sent it to my best friend. In September of 2021, her and her husband had a baby girl who was the cutest little chunk. And a year later, her daughter was born and she is the cutest little chunk.
Even though we have dream logs, as we've mentioned before, you can write them off because it doesn't seem significant at all. It seems mundane, or your mind is wandering and you talk yourself out of it. So I had a reading with an astrologer in January. She was pointing to the fact that I had a reverse nodal return in 2022. It was March 27th to April 14th, 2022. I had multiple dreams that were me being in a relationship with somebody. I had one where I was opening and closing kitchen cabinets and I was organizing the apartment essentially. There was some sort of emotional disconnect with this partner, and this happened multiple times in a few of the dreams. I also had some self doubt about dating someone who I felt was like the most attractive person I had dated. I had a double date with one of my friends and her husband with this guy, and that he was chewing on a toothpick. Like he had some sort of like oral fixation almost, that he kept chewing on something and it bothered me. The partner who I had a year-long relationship with and I was living abroad with, those are all things that exactly describe stuff that happened in our relationship and things that he did. Within our first month of dating, I helped reorganize his apartment, and I was with his aunt for hours in his kitchen, deciding where all of his pots and pans should go, cleaning the whole thing out. There was definitely an emotional disconnect. EQ was not there. I had doubts within the first handful of months dating, like, why is this guy with me? All this other stuff. I had to work through that. I had a double date with him and that exact couple I mentioned. The toothpick thing, he always used, those dental flossers? He would always use that and he would put it on the bedside table rather than throwing it out. And it really bothered me. And even like his dad said something about it. Like, why are you doing that? Just like throw it away or do that in the bathroom and throw it out. All of those things were super specific to our relationship. And all of those happened within the 2-week period of this reverse nodal return. And I didn't meet this guy for another 2.5 months. The fact that I was rereading them in 2024, well after the relationship ended, all of a sudden they made so much sense and I had chills. I couldn't believe what I was reading.
It almost makes me wonder why we have some of these premonitions or some of these dreams, right? What are we going to do with them?
I
Except
know.
look back on them and be like, oh, that happened. Even if you looked back while you were in the relationship and saw these notes, I don't even think they would be helpful because we have to go through these experiences before we have the hindsight to look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have accepted this behavior or I should have been more assertive there. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's not like, as an example, my friend Lauren was essentially having a hot flash. She was fine. So there wasn't anything I needed to do with that information. I could have read any 2 weeks in the last 4 years of journals that I have. And it was a 2-week period that was forecasting a year-long relationship.
Let's jump to visitation dreams now. A visitation dream is any dream where you have an interaction with a person who has passed. I really want to strongly encourage you not to talk yourself out of these dreams because it's such a beautiful experience to have. And it's real and it's not hurting anybody. And it doesn't matter if someone tells you it's incorrect or it's wrong. It's your dream, it's your experience. Just go with it and enjoy the gift that you've been given. That being said, in terms of visitation dreams, I have them quite often. My grandma and I have cats who have passed away, so they visit me as well. But I also have dreams from like my friend's parents who have passed away, or my friend's sister passed away during the pandemic, and she came to me very clearly. It was kind of quiet. And I'm looking around, I'm walking down a street, and I look into a window and I see my friend and her nephew in like a dance studio, dancing, playing around, but it's just them. And I turn to my right, and my friend's sister is there. And in my mind, I'm registering, she's not supposed to be here. This doesn't make sense. And what she said to me is like, she's doing a great job, isn't she? And I was like, yeah, but like, how are you here? I woke up and I wrote it down. I was crying, I was sobbing. It was very emotional. Renee, I'm curious to hear what your visitation dreams are like.
The first visitation dream that I had was Christmas Eve 2013, and I was down the Cape with my family. In the dream, I was at our family house, and my brother was there with one of his high school friends, and we were talking or they were running around, and all of a sudden, my mom just descends from the top of the stairs into the foyer by our front door. And she said, Nana's coming. And everyone just stopped and we all like sat down. And it was the weirdest thing. So I was aware, just like what you said, I was like, what the heck? The plot was completely disrupted. And the front door opens and there was a figure there, but I couldn't really see it. And it was just a lot of light. And I woke up out of this dream in the middle of the night and I couldn't remember what she said, but I just felt a feeling of love and that she was really proud of us. And by us, I mean my siblings and I, and my family. And I was lying there and it's the middle of the night and I'm tired. I'm like, I have to remember this. I have to remember this. I couldn't run in the other room and go wake my mom up and tell her. I fell back asleep. I woke up the next day and I told her about it. The year prior, we had also been down the Cape for Christmas and my Nana had visited her. Fast forward, my grandpa dies. And what would happen is he would be far away in the distance and I'd be like, oh, there's grandpa. And then increasingly, he'd get closer and closer, and I'd see him for longer. He was trying to communicate and he was trying to get to me, but maybe he hadn't transitioned long enough, or what I now think is I probably wasn't able to hold his energy. So it took 4, maybe 5 tries to actually get him close enough where we were sitting there and we interacted for a little bit longer. He was a man of few words, so it wasn't an extensive conversation. And I do have another visitation story that came up during the eclipse, so I'll share it when we move on to that segment.
When this episode comes out, we will be a couple weeks away from the start of the fall 2024 eclipse season. We were both heavily impacted by the spring eclipse season. Shout out to episode 2. So let's fill the listeners in to see how they relate and can prepare.
I kept waking up during the night. I had trouble sleeping. I was really having trouble remembering my dreams. I'd remember there was an idea of something, but it wasn't as detailed. It wasn't every single night, but it was kind of all over the place. I also had multiple dreams about actually seeing the eclipses. This happened before the lunar and the total solar eclipse. And typically, how it would present for me is it would be super oversized and they would also move really, really quickly. So the whole eclipse would take like 5 seconds. I had a dream on March 25th, which was the day of the lunar eclipse, where I was sitting at my desk and my vision actually started to black out. And then it went completely black. And I was laying on my bed and I was freaking out because I couldn't see. My own internal eclipse was happening. I also had dreams where I woke up crying. I have to sit there for a little bit and just let it pass before I could fall back asleep. This isn't something that had happened prior to. I was rereading to prepare for this episode and I had a dream, Christine. And all I wrote down was, I was told I have other Claires. And I looked at the date and it was 4 days before we recorded the Claire's episode and you told me about the clarifactants. And I don't even know if you had done the research yet. All right, so the last dream that I wanted to share from this spring eclipse cycle is I had a visitation dream. April 9th, which was within 24 to 48 hours after the total solar eclipse. In this dream, I was down the Cape and I was sitting on the couch talking to my mom, and some of my extended family was there. All of a sudden, I thought about my dad. 2 seconds later, my mom, who was facing the door, saw that he was walking up to the front door. And my mom was like, "You can't be here," like, blah, blah, blah. And then I stood up and I started kind of giving it to him. All of a sudden, I looked down, my granddad was sitting there. So he just poof, popped up in the dream. He was smiling, like he loved it. Something happens, he ends up leaving. I go sit back on the couch. My granddad is in his recliner across the room where he normally would sit. I knew that I was the only one that could see him. And I was like, "Can you believe that?" Like, I had that premonition that I was thinking about my dad, and then he showed up and he was just saying he was amazed and he was so proud. I'm able to hold so much more space and my skills are really developing. This was the clearest visitation dream I'd ever had. It was a full on conversation for an extended period of time. Versus the dream I had with my Nana, where I couldn't even see her and she was basically a ball of light, and all the stuff with my grandpa. Clearly there was growth, which is what he was telling me in the dream. So I was just really emotional about it because it was so nice and validating, just the fact that he was able to visit, but then also what he said. During this upcoming fall eclipse, maybe you'll have sleep disruption, maybe you'll have dreams about the eclipse, maybe you'll be highly emotional, maybe you'll get messages, or maybe you'll have visitation. Christine, what was your spring eclipse season like dream wise?
Some of the dreams that I had during the eclipse were pretty interesting. I continue to have this dream. It's a premonition sort of dream, but about September and the 19th of November. And I checked the astrology for that timing. And that's when Pluto goes direct in Aquarius. So it'll be the last time that Pluto is in Aquarius and Capricorn for a very long time. I have a Capricorn rising. So this Pluto and Capricorn season has been kind of tough on me. I think it's interesting that I'm getting dreams of this specific date when Pluto is supposed to go into Aquarius. I'm not entirely sure what it means yet. At the beginning of March, I had a dream that I saw the solar eclipse in person, and I did, which exciting. I also had a dream that I was putting out some work and I was getting a ton of really, really great feedback. And what I remember specifically from the dream is that there were three keys. Keys symbolize that you're very capable and adaptable. So that is also a really positive dream that I had during the eclipse. And then finally, I had a dream that I could go back to science in the seventh grade or like musical theater freshman year of high school. Like I could choose whether I wanted to be in middle school or high school, basically. And I chose high school, which was a sign of growth. By the beard of Zeus. This is a weird one. I was in this park and I was hanging out with two friends and I was talking to them about their family. I remember the greenery was so lush. It was just bright, bright green. As I'm walking along the path, I see a dog and the dog looks fine. The dog's chasing a coin. And then I continue to walk on. I see a cat. The cat also looks fine, but I'm seeing more coins. I got very confused. And as I try to continue walking forward, it almost feels like I'm stuck in a vortex of sorts. People in front of me at the park sitting on the grass having a picnic, and they were telling me that I was resisting. This was a little unnerving in my dream. I'm trying to move and I can't move. So they look up and they're like, she doesn't want to. And they look back at me and they're like, we're just trying to share information with you. I finally stopped resisting and I saw two paddles that you would use like when their like heart is palpitating or like they've lost consciousness to restart their heart. And then once they put the paddles on my feet, I saw a huge white light and it felt like I had downloaded some information.
That was a super fun conversation. I love talking about dreams, and honestly, it was really challenging to prepare for this episode because of the sheer volume of dreams. Please let us know if you want us to do another episode on this topic in the future, or if you'd like to see a recurring segment where we share any noteworthy psychic dreams. It could be 1 to 2 on some sort of a regular basis.
This week, I learned a really fun fact. The letter Q doesn't appear in any American states' names. I think it's the only letter in the alphabet. And if you're curious, you can go ahead and sing the state song. It's kind of interesting.
What I learned this week was the term time affluency. This is defined as the sense of having adequate time to accomplish what you want to do. The opposite here is time famine or time poverty, so a sense of not having enough time. It's not the reality of not having enough time or having enough time, it's your sense of it. It's a psychological phenomenon. You can increase your sense of having enough time to get done what you want by time blocking, by doing monotasking. Set a timer and you only focus on one thing and you make sure that you're not doing a lick of multitasking. Or highlight a top 1 to 3 things that you want to get done on that day. If you get done any more than that, it's a bonus and you'll have a greater sense of self-efficacy.
It's time for the channeled portion of our episode. A man sitting at a desk, and the feeling was a very magical but serene workshop. This person was stamping on this piece of paper, and it looked like art. It didn't look like it was all willy-nilly. Taking a brush to it and adding some paint and adding some glitter, the card would sort of sit on their desk and kind of just melt like cotton candy. It was almost like I was in the dream maker's workshop. Throughout this whole episode, I've been asking 1,000 questions about dreams and what the purpose of dreams is. They were saying that even if you feel like you don't understand it, whatever has happened has prepared your soul, so don't even worry about it. Be curious about your dreams, explore them. It's not something to obsess over. The mantra that I got was, what you seek awaits you in your dreams. If there's something that you've been mulling over, or you're looking for an answer to something and you can't figure it out, pay a little bit more attention to your dreams and see if your dreams are trying to tell you what the answer is, or at least not to worry about it. Spiritual homework that I got for this is to practice good sleep hygiene. Setting a consistent bedtime, read for a little bit, or shut all the lights and just light a candle.
My sleep hygiene is an ongoing battle. I can be a night owl in the sense that I'll get a second wind and all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and it's like, why am I not asleep? Your brain gets flushed when you're sleeping at night and it clears and prevents plaques and all this other stuff that ties to memory, day-to-day function, and then of course in the long term there's connection to dementia and Alzheimer's and all that jazz. When it comes to the reading that I got, the first message that came in was fortune favors the meek. On the more positive side or neutral side, it means quiet and gentle. The negative connotation is it can be overly passive. That was being omitted from the definition here. Listeners are encouraged to be still and maybe start a 3 to 5 minute meditation practice. I'm getting that some of you can do daily and others might need to start with weekly and build up the routine. I also started seeing an image of like a mandala drawing. So there's other forms of meditation that you can do, and one of them is actually drawing or coloring in a coloring book. For some, it might be more attainable for you. Set an alarm for 10 to 15 minutes where you're sitting by yourself with a coloring book and you maybe play meditation music or something calming and do that on a regular basis. And the mantra that I got was, I create my own peace. We all have the power to grant ourselves that gift of peace, even in these bite-sized increments, 3 to 5 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, daily, weekly, whatever works for your schedule and where you're at. But remember that it compounds over time and it will support your healing.
I wonder if the listeners can use your reading to create better sleep hygiene.
That's a great point,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody could do their mandala coloring book for 10 to 15 minutes right before bed.
Yeah.
You could definitely pair them together.
Thanks for listening.
If you'd like to learn more, the resources we used to prepare for this episode are listed in the show notes.
You can reach me, Christine, at Channeled by Christine with 1L on Instagram.
And you can reach me, Renee, at _read by Renee, or connect with both of us via email at synergytosynastry@gmail.com.
Keep keep your spirit curious and your aura sparkling.
We'll see you when the stars next align.
One of our episodes, I guess I cursed, and I was listening to it with my dad. I think it was the HD episode. He's like, "Did you just curse?" I'm like, "I did." He's like, I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? We just did so much great work, and this is what you're gonna focus on."
I don't know why I didn't tell you this before. I had a dream last night. Me and 3 Vampire Diaries characters. Someone in the car asked me to look up the place we were going, and it was Queens something, and I forgot what the second word was. So I started to Google it, and then we just kind of pulled up. All of a sudden, we were going inside, and it was like a ballet studio, and there were 2 people, and they were dancing. And then all of a sudden, there was a voice in my ear, like as if somebody rushed up behind me, and they said, "Now let me see." And then I woke up.
Ooh. I also love that you're rewatching The Vampire Diaries. Oh, that's wild.
First part of the dream was just something that was a product of me rewatching this show, and then it very, very quickly went into we're going somewhere, and something kind of sinister was happening. Keep having people talking, it's in my right ear,
Interesting.
but my head was against the pillow.
Interesting, because your right is your future and your masculine side. I don't know if that helps at all.